Hey everybody, I'm Pastor Chris Mays from New Life Fellowship, and I just want to say welcome to this session of We Are New Life. 2023 is New Life Fellowship's 50th anniversary as a church, and I've been using this opportunity to sit down with some people that have been at the church for varying lengths of time, just to ask them some of their experiences at New Life and get some testimonies about the goodness and faithfulness of God that will encourage you. And this evening I'm joined by Heather and Daniel Serrano. Good evening, guys.
Hey.
Good evening.
Heather happens to be my daughter, and Daniel's my son-in-law, so it's a unique opportunity to get to sit and chat, and we may have some different stories than your average congregant that hasn't been in the inner circle of our family, so to speak. But to start with tonight, tell us a little bit about how long have you been coming to the church, and this may be a different answer for the both of you. Heather, you may have been around longer than Daniel, but tell us a little bit in your own words about how you came to the church, how long you've been here, and what was going on in your life at the time when you came.
Sure. So the first times that I started coming would be about 1 or 2 times a year, probably, I'd say, from 9 or 10 years old, when Pastor Dudley, who I fondly called Grandpa, would come, or we would come to see him, and Nana Wynn, which is, everyone calls her Aunt Winnie. But we would come once or twice a year as a kid growing up. And then when we actually moved to Pittsburgh was in December of 2014. So that's when we actually joined, which is probably your story.
Yeah, so we came around December 2014. And at that time, there was a lot going on. We were moving across the country from Seattle, Washington, and Heather was pregnant at the time, and we had a 2-1-ish 2-year-old child at the time.
I can tell you remember all this vividly.
So it was, it was hectic, moving across the country,
Yeah.
New babies. It was just it was a kind of large transition and crazy time in our life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously some of the move was to be back on the East Coast near family. I would love to say the church was the only reason that you moved across country, but it really was to be close to family again and be around.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
exactly right.
Yeah, we were the only ones in Washington. My family is on the East Coast as well, down in Florida, and Heather's family obviously is around here. So whatever reason, we didn't move to Florida, which I will continually say was the wrong decision.
Oh, come on.
Just kidding.
No.
The weather is much better there.
Yeah. Now, I can't say I would disagree with that. If I had the choice of am I going to live in Pittsburgh or Florida, I might pick the weather there. Maybe not the summertime weather.
Sure.
Though, so
Too hot.
yeah.
No, because in Pittsburgh you get all 4 seasons, so it's way better.
Okay. What's your favorite season?
Fall.
Fall for
Always
sure.
fall.
And
Summer.
Daniel is the summer.
Yeah.
See, I'm on the same page with Daniel in the
Yeah.
summertime. So you moved across country, which meant trying to establish yourself in new areas, new jobs, new place to live, new church to go to, and you ended up here at New Life. I'm assuming the big factor was because your mom and I were around at the church leading it.
Yes.
But when you first came to New Life, what are some of your, I know you obviously talked about coming when you were 9 or 10 when we first got married and we would come every year, but when you came this time with your family, with Daniel, and what were some of your first memories, for both of you, that question, but what were some of your first memories of New Life? Are there people that stood out to you or just how you felt? Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, I can start. I think for me it was a little different than a normal church because, when we moved to Seattle, literally I remember dropping my dad. I drove across the country before Heather came out. I remember dropping my dad off at the airport and feeling this sinking feeling of, is this the right decision? I know literally no one in this city except for the people that I interviewed for my position, And moving here was a little bit different because we had a built-in kind of support system. Yeah. So when we came to the church for the first time, it wasn't really the first time. We had been before. Obviously, we flew here when we were in Seattle, so we knew a lot of the people here. So I think it was comforting for us because it was you know, moving to a place where everyone knows your name. I know you like that from Cheers. So, most people did know us, so it wasn't a hard transition, unlike making new friends and, starting a new job. All of those things were a lot harder because we didn't have the infrastructure in place, and here we kind of already had the support system. So that's what I remember, is that being a kind of a known in the unknown when we moved here.
Right. Almost to some degree, maybe more than you want sometimes, because like as part of the pastor's family, people almost feel like, I know you and I should know everything that's going on in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but it was always very welcoming. So yes, there's an edge of that, but maybe in the sense that like I felt like I should know more about these individuals that are talking to me because they know so much about me, you know, and I, really enjoy people. So that's difficult. But I was thinking that coming and joining the church as a part of the church and a member was actually different than just coming and visiting, because I thought I knew, what the church was about and what everything was like, and actually establishing ourselves as a family in New Life was a bit new and different than just visiting and leaving whenever, so, but it was nice. I mean, it was nice to start to get to know people and to know, that you can trust the pastors. Because you even share some DNA. So
yeah. Who are some of the first people that you remember that stick out to you?
Go ahead.
I was thinking about back when I came as a kid, that Dave and Tammy Nelson would teach us Sunday school. And so Tammy I feel like I've known Tammy since, being so small and so little, even maybe a little better than others. Just always so friendly and so full of life, and she's still always like that. So she stands out. And then the Joneses stand out, of course, Steve and Dottie and the whole family. They're just a staple, just make you feel like you're wrapped up in a big Jones hug. So.
Yeah, I would agree with the Joneses for sure. Just people that I think know us but didn't necessarily, and then getting to know them were probably the first people that I remember.
Okay, that's fair enough. I was thinking about that aspect of people getting to know you, and just in this moment, I'm being reminded of when your mom and I first came.
Yeah.
I think people assumed they knew me because they knew Dad, and they just thought, oh, you're just like him. You'll be exactly like him. But then they get to know you and find out, oh, you really are different or unique, or you've got your own history and experiences.
Right.
So I can relate to that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Thinking about some of those people that you knew and they're helping you, that's great to remember. Even Tammy teaching you in Sunday school.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's some things that people have imparted to you, or some things that you've learned that have helped you in your walk with Jesus, or your marriage, or life in general since you've been at New Life? What would be some of those principles that people have imparted, or things, maybe just a nugget or two that you picked up along the way of like, oh, that was really helpful, of learning that from being part of the church?
Yeah, you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. Do you want the canned answer of the pastor gave me nuggets? But seriously, I will say, I think, and probably something that I've heard from a lot of people at the church is, the people at the door truly do care. So Bill Malenka, for sure, just has this spirit of welcoming and, come on in. It doesn't matter what's going on. We're here to really open our arms and wrap them around you. So I would say that welcoming nature from, Bill, who's now an elder, for sure is something that's very memorable and something that sticks out. And then,
almost like teaching us to be authentic,
Yeah.
no matter what job you happen to be doing at the moment.
Yeah.
Like people, remembering that people really resonate with authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just who he is, and I think that it really is something that sticks out in my head.
Yeah. For me, I think one of the main things, and I grew up, of course, Dad, but our small church in Virginia, it was, a more intimate setting, not too many people, and always, I feel like, pursuing, what God has for us, the Holy Spirit, what he wants to say for that moment. And I feel like New Life has that same feel of just leaving room for God to speak and, for him to show off, because he's always working. And I think that is a real trait of New Life, that, we take the time to listen and let God do his thing,
Yeah, and to add to that, right, I think one of the key principles at this church is, making the supernatural not so weird or scary or whatever.
Yeah.
However you want to say that. I grew up Catholic, so in a Catholic church, and so there's a lot of spiritual things that you learn about in the Bible, and you have to figure that out along the way sometimes. And some flavors of that are a little too extreme for my personality, right? I've been to some places where I didn't really understand what was happening, not because they're weird, but because I just didn't understand what the Holy Spirit gives us today in those types of scenarios.
Right.
And I think that New Life really does help people understand, hey, this is just access to a God that loves us, and here's the Holy Spirit that has so much more than we even know or understand. And I think that's one of the things that I would consider a nugget here.
That's good. I think the Holy Spirit, he can't always be put in that box of our expectations, but in terms of our day-to-day life and our experience with him, it's not something that's supposed to be weird. It's supposed to be natural and integrate into every part of our lives. And there may be times when he does things that we don't understand, or it looks strange or messy, but for the majority of our living life, it should be just like somebody's walking with us who's empowering us to live life.
Well, and even more just an expectation that he is going to do something, and that we know he's moving, instead of just everyday mundane, but no, we're going to come expectant that God, you're going to do something. Because
absolutely.
You're always working.
Thinking about the Holy Spirit doing stuff that we can't explain, or he moves in some ways, are there one or two times where you've seen something happen that makes you just like, that's amazing, that I have a testimony of God's goodness because he's real, he did this, I can't explain it any other way than it's him? Are there one or two times since you've been at New Life that you've seen something happen that you would consider, this is a miraculous testimony that I have?
Yeah, do you want to talk about
the
most
just recently,
one?
I know that God gave me a physical healing. So I had a fibroid and was not supposed to go away on its own. In fact, the physician was like, this will either stay the same or it will grow or you will get more. And those were like the only options. And then if you want it removed, you'll have to get it surgically removed. And so we prayed and we waited, because I was like, I don't want to just jump to surgery, and we obviously we trust God. And if that were the option, we would have done whatever was the best advice. But when I went back for the follow-up ultrasound.
In the interim, you had people praying for you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I shared with the family, and I know that it was shared with the prayer team. I believe so. And then when I went back for the follow-up, they were like, the technician, who I know isn't even really supposed to talk to you about what they see, because it has to be read by a physician, but she was like, I can't even say that I see a fibroid at all. I wouldn't even feel right writing down that I see anything. And so, I just know that God touched me and took it away. And
that's awesome.
So that was just in the last couple months. So
wow,
it was recent.
Fantastic. Like when you get a healing like that something was there before and now it's gone. Nobody can take that away from you. Like, that's so real, and you own that now.
It is, and it shows you that he cares, because not that I'm belittling what the issue was, but I wasn't told I'm going to die or, and it's like these things that God cares about. He cares about the small things that are not small to you, and it was amazing.
That's cool. I think there's a lot more to our lives that we should look at as miraculous, even the little things. But every now and then it's like something that pops out that's so big that you're just like, that got my attention and I know he's real.
Undeniable.
Yeah. Any other thoughts that you want to add to that, Daniel, or any other experiences you can think of?
Not add, but I can talk about an experience. So I think I have two experiences. One, I would say, is regarding my job. So I was in a job and I didn't really want to be in that job, right? And so praying and sending applications out and trying to figure out what to do. And in the process of it, to make a long story short, I was in a very long interviewing process for this new job, and, telling my old job, hey, this is coming up, things are changing. And in the middle of all of that, I basically was offered another job within the same company without having to do anything really. And they basically just said, hey, we really value you, want you to stay. We're going to offer you some new positions. And I really do think that transition during that time of me stressing about it and being so stressed out was, a time that I really had to lean on just trusting God and saying, what's the best path? And Heather and I were talking about this the other day. Sometimes, you see a door open and a door close and you think, oh, that's God. Mm-hmm. And, it is in some instances, but sometimes it's just a door opening, right? And it may not be the right decision for you. And in this particular instance, I went ahead with that job and then transitioned to another job pretty recently after, because that job, there was some circumstances that fell through, but I'm now in a place where my job and my life and my work and my family and balance is all back to normal. My stress is back down.
Same company, but just
Right.
different roles.
Just moving.
And
Okay.
watching God move in that.
Right. So I think I learned in that, and through our conversations sometimes, did I just take a position because it was an open door, rather than really understanding, is this going to be the best that God has for me?
Because there's still that aspect of having peace about the
Right.
decision,
Right.
and asking him for discernment.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's several things that have to line up so that it's God.
Yep.
But yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. And I'm just even reminded of Jesus telling us, if we seek first the kingdom, he takes care of all that other stuff.
Yeah.
He
Right.
takes care of what we're going to eat, what we're going to wear, where we're going to live. I think where we're going to work even is
Right.
under that umbrella.
Yeah. So, the other thing was I had a weird heart thing. I don't know how to describe it. My heart was palpitating and having a lot of issues. And, I know I'm old, but I'm not that old. You know what I mean? So,
Well,
so, I had to go get a lot of tests. And in the end, I was having a lot of symptoms, and, there was kind of something they could find, but not really. So sending me to the specialists and just praying and, getting prayer from who was
Max.
the Max. I
Yeah.
got prayer from the Max, and just being able to release that and say it out loud and tell people that aren't, a part of the family, but
Yeah.
are a part of the church family,
Yeah.
kind of let go of some of that stress. And in the end, I don't know if it was, healing over, or
Yeah.
if it was just something weird that happened. Nothing is wrong. I went and did a lot of testing, and everything is clear, and I have not had symptoms
right.
since.
The symptoms are gone. So
Wow.
that in and of itself is
There you go.
Yeah.
So
God did something.
God did
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
right? But I think some of it was just having the ability to go talk to some people within the church and just say, hey, I'm having this issue. And they were there praying with me and, caring about me and checking in with me. A few weeks later, they knew I was scheduled to go get some testing and checking in. And, just that little bit of compassion and caring really goes a long way.
Yeah.
And I think that, just exemplifies the church and the people in this church.
Yeah. There really is some benefit to being connected, to know I can tell people what's going on. They'll bear my burdens. They'll
Yeah.
pray for
Yep.
me. I think I don't know how people do it when they're not connected to a church family or a support group like that. Just to even something as simple as there's people praying for me.
Right.
It's an amazing thought,
Yeah.
and really a benefit of being connected to God's family.
I've thought the same thing so many times. What
Yeah.
do you do if you don't turn to,
Right. Right. Thinking about that, that there really are benefits from being connected to the church and having people who know you and are in relationship with you. That makes me think of another question that came to my mind was, as much benefits as there are, I know no church is perfect. Like there really are, things that come up in life, in any family, in a natural family and in any church family. It was funny, Heather, you were talking earlier about, when you came to Pittsburgh when you were younger, and you thought, it's almost like you're a celebrity because, it's Chris and Pam's one of their daughters, and we just come and we see everybody, and then we go home, and we're not dealing with the day-to-day life of being together and in the church. I know no church is perfect, and I know New Life is not perfect. But what are some of the factors that either keep you coming back, or what are the things that make it worth working through those difficulties or persevering in that?
Well, I think some of the ways that I've worked through any type of like personal frustrations or things that maybe aren't the way I want to see it at all times, are just really reminding myself that it's not about me, and I have to do that just at home and in life and at work, but it's true, especially at church, like I'm not here for me alone, and while God uses, New Life to really meet needs for me, I'm not here just because I'm here for myself and what I want, and it's got to be exactly how I think it should be. And so, I know I've said this many a times, but it's just like a get over yourself speech that I give to myself, and I remember, we're here for the King, and we're here because of him, and in every area that I serve, it's about him, and whenever I start to get into my head or I'm frustrated or things aren't really going the way I think they should go, I just remind myself that he'll make a way, and that I don't have to have it all exactly how I want it, because sometimes that's where we grow. When you're not having everything exactly perfect, you learn some stuff about yourself, and you start to change, and I think it's usually for the better. And so if we can start to do that, I think that's when positivity and just growth happens. So
I'm thinking of the passage. I can't quote it off the top of my head right now, where Paul gives the list of this difficulties produce patience, and patience produces endurance, and endurance produces character. And it's like, that really does good things come in our lives when we walk through the difficult times.
Right.
So that's a good thought. What about you, Daniel?
So I would say, I think if you strip everything away from most churches, you're coming to encounter God in a place where he has created this availability, right? We're in the United States. We have freedom to worship how we want to worship. And there is something special about coming together and doing that, because like I said, I gave the example earlier of allowing myself to, take a burden and hand it off to some other people. So, that is literally what I know happens when I'm praying and things like that. God's carrying my burdens with me, but to have somebody that I can look in the eye and say, I'm really having this issue, and, even be emotional. I'm not very emotional, but even in that moment I was emotional, fearing. There was a lot of fear in me at the time. So I think that is what keeps people coming back and keeps me coming back, is just knowing, you can strip away all of the other stuff. There's always going to be, I even tell my kids this, there's always somebody bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, right? There's always things out there, but when you come to the house of God, you're coming to God, and so that's the best that you're going to get. So strip away all of the things that might be personality or things like that.
Or preference.
And, you get what you need, because God's calling you here, and he's the one asking you to come, so he's going to provide what you need in that time.
And I would say, because you brought up our boys, we have 2 boys, as you know, for others, and I think any chance that we have to have them have an encounter, because it's the same for us, and we know that, and we're adults, and we want that, but like we're wanting them to experience the presence of God, and they can experience that at home and at school and anywhere, but we know that at church they're going to encounter people that know him and are living life for him and with him, and so if we can get them around that there's a better chance that they're going to walk with the Lord for the rest of their lives. So
Yeah, we shifted the name of the kids ministry last year to Kids Encounters.
right.
And it's because the thought was we're wanting them to have the same experiences with Jesus in the kids service as we are having as adults.
Yep.
And I've heard recently, because mom takes a turn back with the kids once a month.
Yeah.
And she's played me a couple times. She uses her phone to record them worshiping.
Oh.
And just the sound of the kids singing and the things that they know and how they're connecting to the Lord, like it is really amazing. Like it was
it's
almost
powerful.
humbling just to sit there and listen. Like those are our kids. Like
Yeah.
not just the kids in the church, but also those are our grandsons.
Yeah.
Like worshiping God with all they have, and it was pretty cool to hear. But
Yeah.
I know that's part of the church. Isn't meant to replace parents. We come alongside.
Right.
So I believe what the boys are expressing is part of what they've learned here, but it's also what you've instilled in them at home.
Yeah.
And
It's just giving them that chance every possible time we can.
yeah, and I want to say don't underestimate what you have to offer. Just like you talked about, it's not about me. I come to help
Yeah.
serve and to give away, and you as well. Don't underestimate that the things you do, whether you think they're little or big,
Right.
it's making a difference. It's planting a seed in somebody's life. So
true.
you might not even be aware of it, but it's there and it's happening.
Yeah, often you don't know.
Yeah.
Until later, if you're blessed enough for someone to tell you, hey, this meant,
Yeah.
but you might not ever know,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you just got to trust that those seeds,
Yeah.
God wanted me to plant those, and He's going to watch over them.
Yeah.
That I didn't intend for this to be a segue, but saying that to you guys, I'm hearing my dad's voice saying, "You've got the goods."
You've got the good.
Yeah, and one question I have been asking everybody though is if they have a story that they can remember of Pastor Dudley or Pastor Grandpa,
Yeah.
however you want to talk about it.
Just Grandpa.
Or if you want to tell a Pastor Dudley story and a story on me from the last 15 years that Mom and I have been pastoring. Any of those are fair game. I haven't asked anybody to send me their responses ahead or vetted the answer to this question. But yeah,
in
do
case.
you have a story about Dad that you want to share, or even about me? It doesn't matter.
Well, I am happy to share about Grandpa because I have a lot of time with him. Daniel did too, but I love some of his stories and some of the phrases that he always had. He used to always sing about hopping on the bus, God's on the move, He always was just such a fun time.
Yeah.
But my favorite Grandpa-ism that I think that I've inherited naturally is that he always told me he had the gift of guest. So, wherever he could go, he was an excellent guest, and you could provide anything you want to him, But
he said, if you have the gift of hospitality, I'll come as the gift of guest
that's
and
exactly
help you
right.
use it.
Yeah. He can, and I love that. But he also said to me, if you open up your pockets, God will fill them up. So I walk around like that with that mentality. So I said, okay, I'm opening up my pockets, just fill it up.
Yep.
So, that's a great Grandpa.
Oh, that's hilarious. And you've seen that happen too.
That's true. Yeah, of course. He always provides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Daniel?
A story that I have is were we here yet when I went to the Gavin Eat? So there's
No, we hadn't moved yet.
we hadn't moved,
Yeah.
so we were visiting one time.
I have a feeling though, this is how Dad knew you. He liked you. Yeah.
So we were visiting, and it was breakfast time, and Grandpa said, "Let's go get breakfast. I'm going to take you to this place called the Gavin Eat," which I think is still around. Did it make it through COVID?
Yeah.
Nice. And they have this very large breakfast platter that supposedly you shouldn't be able to finish. And I looked at him and I said, "I'll order that and eat the whole thing." And he did not believe I could get that down. And I totally ate every
whole
last bite of
thing.
it. And I just remember him being almost shocked in the moment that I finished it, because the waitress came over and she said, "Did you finish that by yourself?" And, Grandpa was like, he actually ate the whole thing by himself.
He was probably impressed,
Yeah.
So I just remember, this, larger than life man
Yeah.
watching me, because I'm not very tall, and I'm eating, as much as him or more, and he was just he couldn't believe it. So that's just one of those memories.
Which is who he is. And so that's amazing because, we know, I obviously never knew him before he knew the Lord, but like just the stories about him, and then the way that we knew him, which is just a lover of Jesus and a lover of life. And, that shows you that, God had a hold of him.
Yeah. My dad would have told you that anything of value as far as loving people or being generous or any of that was only in his life because Jesus completely changed him. So that's awesome to hear that story and be reminded of it. Thinking about, just to wrap up our time here in our session, we've been celebrating and looking back over 50 years as a church. And if you were going to give one or two pieces of advice to somebody that was coming to the church now that is maybe going to be here for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, what advice would you give to them?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go for that.
Well, I would say two things. The first thing that I would say is serve. Put your hands to something, because I feel like, you really just get to see God move when you're giving of yourself. And so giving doesn't just have to be money. It's, wherever God has called you, because that, at least in my experience, and I'm clearly not that old, but as I look back over my life, I think about, the times that I've seen God move is when I've been obedient and said yes, to, sometimes it's not what you want to do, or maybe it's a time commitment or some other kind of commitment, but you really see the hand of God and you experience just who he is, and usually it's through watching him and others, and I think you really get that when you use your gifts, But then the second thing I would say is, this is a place that you can trust that, you're going to hear the Father speak. You can trust the heart and the DNA. I know I'm biased because I literally have the DNA of the pastors, but I just think it's a place that that dad and mom are always seeking, always asking God, what can we do? What are you saying? So I would just say it's okay to trust the leadership.
Oh, thanks for saying that. Even if we don't get it right every time.
Right. We're going to mess up.
Yeah. But we're trying.
I saved your stories. I didn't talk about it.
But
we're all going to mess up.
You've still got a minute or two. You could share one if you want. But thanks for sharing that one. Daniel, what advice would you give to somebody that's going to be around for the next couple decades?
I don't know if it's advice or just a word, right? I think we're using this expectant or be expectant, but if you really look at the history of the church and all that has occurred, we had a few testimonies here. We know of other people who've had healings. All of these things, you're going to see, that whole supernatural aspect of God in this church. So just come expecting that. Know that it is, for you, for today, that God loves you and wants to be a part of your life in the big things. In our examples of these very large healings of the body versus all of the little things. And I don't think that's advice. I just think it's something to look forward to as you are coming to the church.
I
think it's advice.
Yeah, it's advice. But
just
I
come with an expectation. Stir yourself. Because if you don't expect anything, you're not going to get anything. I think there's a principle in there somewhere of like, if I just come like I'm going through the motions and I'm not having an expectation, then what's going to happen? But if I come trusting God, you're real, I'm going to meet you in this place, I'm going to see you do things, like that attracts him and his move. So well,
and I was just going to add to that, because of the way that you even spoke, he's no respecter of persons. Like, it doesn't matter who you are or what you're coming from or what you've done, or he really he calls you by name. He knows who you are, and he'll do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. That's good. Good advice. This will be the last shot. Is there anything else rolling around in your head that you wanted to say while we're sitting here before the camera stops? Anything that you want to impart to people? That last call.
I don't think so. I think we've dropped enough wisdom.
I've said everything I know. Well, thank you guys just for sitting with me and having this conversation. And it's encouraging just to hear other people's viewpoints of what's happening in the church and how God's moving in their lives. And I'm trusting that it encouraged you to watch as well and to hear these testimonies and the things that God's doing. So just thank you, Heather and Daniel. And if you guys have been encouraged by hearing this and hearing some of these stories, let us know, send us a line, or come see us. But otherwise, God bless you, and we'll see you next time.